Sarai, in the city of Ur in the Chaldeans. And the city of Ur is the most beautiful city. It's set between the Euphrates and the Tigris River, and it is magnificent. It is a trade center. We have got hospitals, we've got roads, we've got schools, and everybody comes and sells their goods from all over the known world. They come to Ur. And my earliest memories of Ur, we had quite a big house for a big family. And I remember when it would be really hot like it is today. And at night we didn't want to lie in our bedrooms because it was stuffy. So all of us kids would grab our sleeping mats and we would run up the stairs and go and sleep on the roof, where the sky became your ceiling and the stars were your nightlights. And the evening breeze would cool you as it blew through your hair. And then we'd wake up in the morning to the soft kisses of the morning sun on our cheeks. And we would run downstairs and grab some fruit from the kitchen and then run off to see what's new in the markets. Because there were always new traders. And anything you could get in Ur. And my absolute favorite stores were the jewelry stores. They would bring it in from India and Persia, and we had gold and silver and turquoise. It was amazing. And my sisters and I would dig through the stall to see, what can we ask for the next holy day or the next festival? Because there were lots of festivals in Ur. Because Ur is what they call a polytheistic society. There are many, many gods. And in fact, Ur is built at the bottom of a ziggurat, which is this edifice that reaches up to the sky to try and reach the gods. And the gods that it was built for is the god of the moon. He's called Nana. So we had lots of celebrations, and my dad would buy us gifts to celebrate these things. And as children, we absolutely loved it. And outside of the walls of Ur was the dangerous desert. But as kids, we knew nothing about the desert. All we knew was the absolute joy and the peace and the culture of living in this wonderful cosmopolitan city. And when we'd finished at the market, we would meander and work our way down to the school, because boys and girls were taught to write. So we were taught to scribe onto tablets. We were taught the history of Ur, which is over 1,000 years old. So we had a happy and a good childhood there. And when I got to marriageable age, I must have been 12 or 13, the head of our clan, Tera, decided it was time for me to marry, which is normal in my culture. And he chose, again, normal for my culture, my cousin, Abram. And Abram was a bit different to the other men in our tribe, because where they worshipped the gods of Nana and the gods of the sun and all the other strange and wonderful gods, he could trace our line back to Shem, the son of Noah. And he only worshipped the God of Noah, Elohim, Yahweh. And it marked him as a little bit different, but he was a really nice guy. So when the father said this is what they wanted, my father agreed, and I had no objection to marrying him. He was a nice guy. He was handsome and he was charming, and we grew up together. We knew each other. So we got married, and it was a happy, happy marriage. We had everything we needed. It was perfect. Except for one thing. And that one thing was the months passed and I just never conceived. And I watched my friends around me all fall pregnant. And it looked like every woman in Ur was pregnant, except me. And at first we comforted ourselves and said, we're young, it's okay, we've got lots of time, we'll enjoy being a family, we'll build our homes, we'll be young people in a lovely city for a while. But that lasts, and then a little hurt starts to burn. And everyone else's children are turning 2 and they're on their second pregnancy, and it's still nothing. But it's the only problem. And then my uncle Haran passed away, and his son Lot went to live with my father-in-law Terah. And after a while, the men got together, as men do, and they decided that it was time to leave Ur for a while. And they were going to take all our wealth, which was quite tremendous, all our livestock and everything we owned, and move out to the city of Haran. And it meant a lot of work, and they started working on the logistics. And this wasn't just pack your bag and go, because we have 300 slaves alone. Then we're going to have to hire an army to take care of us in the desert, because the Bedouin tribes are going to come and try and take all our sheep and our goats and our livestock. So it was a big performance. And as happens in many households, no one said, "How do you feel, Sarah? You fancy going to live in another city?" Because this society run by men, and the women just do as they're told and go where they must. So I didn't really want to leave Ur. My family is there. My mom is there, my sisters and brothers, and all gorgeous market traders and theatres. But truth to tell, I'm tired of the looks of pity. I'm tired of the little comments of which God is she upset that she doesn't have children. And maybe, just maybe, a new city, a new start, maybe some miracle will happen and I'll have a baby. And you know, being married to Abram, he taught me more and more about this God of Noah. And I was slowly leaving the other gods behind, because all they demanded was awful sacrifices and depraved acts. Whereas this God had breathed out creation. And he just spoke things into being. He was so powerful and so loving. So I was changing my allegiance to him when we decided to settle. Because I'm Abram's wife, I have a bit more choice than the slaves and servants, and I chose to ride on a camel. I don't know about you, but it's my favorite form of transport. Because from the back of the camel, you can just see for miles. And they have that lovely rocking stride that feels like you're going so much further, and the cool air is on your face. So off we set. And working the way we did, we had the soldiers on the outer perimeter, then the livestock, and then the family in the middle, and the staff and the servants and the wealth and everything else, and all the carts. And the sun beats down on your head, and it's dry and it's dusty. And when you look out, it's just miles of undulating sand before you. But it was an adventure. We did about 30 kilometers a day, so it took us about a month to get to where we were going. And each night we would stop, and they would water the animals, and they would set up our tents, and the men would roll out the carpets and bring out the cooking gear, and then the women would make the meals. And it was quite exciting. It was a bit of an adventure. And eventually we got to the city of Haran. And it's not as fancy or as big as the city of Ur, but it's beautiful. So we settled there for a while, and our livestock continued to grow, and it was a good time. It was a lovely time. It was a perfect time, except that my father-in-law, Terah, died. And that was quite a tragedy. He was the patriarch of our clan, and that meant that now his son, Abraham, would have to step up to the plate. And so Lot came to live with us, which was fine, and it was perfect. But we still didn't have a child. And it wasn't for want of trying. It just wasn't happening for us. And one day, a day I'll never forget, we've settled into the city, we have a home, I've decorated it the way I want it. I've made friends amongst the women of the city. And Abraham came in from the fields. And he said he'd been out walking in the field, and Elohim had spoken to him. The God of creation had said he called Abram to be the father of a great nation, and he would bless him with the land of Canaan, and his descendants would be more numerous than stars in the sky. And from these descendants would come the blessing for all the nations of the world. And Abram grabbed onto this blessing of land and a father of nations. I just grabbed on that word, father. That meant children. And so although I was a little bit reluctant, God called us to move to this land that he wanted to give us. And so we packed up what we could take. We got rid of what we couldn't take. And we headed out to Canaan. And this time, I confess, I wasn't as excited. And this time, I rode in the cart with the other women, because I'm a little bit older and bones get jostled quite a lot on camels. And it's hot and it's dusty. And as I sit in that cart watching this endless landscape of sea dunes, and hearing the crunch of the sand underneath the wheels. My heart is saying, you have to trust Elohim, a God of creation who saved Noah from the flood, who has spoken to your husband in person. You've got to trust that there's a child in your future. And my head is going, we're leaving civilization. We're saying goodbye to houses and saying hello to tents in the desert. I'm a city girl. This is not my dream. And that's all you can think as the time goes past, and then suddenly it's ugh, and the wheels sink into some ultra soft sand, and the soldiers have to come and unload all of us and unload our belongings. And we stand and we wait while they dig us out of the sand, and then we move on. And we would set camp in various places, and eventually we came to the great trees outside Memra. And here again, Abram speaking to God, and he heard God's voice. And God said, I'm going to make a covenant with you. And in this covenant, you are going to be the father of a great nation, more numerous than there are grains of sand in the desert. And you will be given land and prosperity, and everything you have will just be blessed because you follow Elohim. That's nice, but when are these children actually going to start coming? Because time is passing. I'm no longer a young woman. The time when it's easy to fall pregnant, I'm getting older now. And each month that goes past is a missed opportunity. But Abram was thrilled with this promise. And we stayed there for a while, and then we'd move on every 3 or 4 weeks when we'd used up all the grazing. And then famine hit the land. We didn't have enough rain. So it was time to move somewhere where there was more abundance. And further out is Egypt. And Egypt is in the fertile Nile Valley, so they always have grain to sell. And we're fortunate, we have money to spend. So we packed up the whole caravan and we started to move up to Egypt. And on our way there, my dear husband of decades said to me, you know, we're related. I'm like, yeah, I'm aware we're related. We grew up together. And he said, I'm just nervous. You're so beautiful that when we get to Egypt, the men there will see you and they'll want you. And if they know I'm your husband, they might just kill me so that they can claim you. So let's just tell everyone that you're my cousin. Because you are my cousin. I'm sure they're far more likely to kill you for your sheep and your gold, but okay, we'll go with that. And we got to Egypt and we bought provision for all our livestock and we set up in a camp. And I hate to admit this, but my husband was right. Because Pharaoh heard of this foreign woman and he decided he wanted me for his harem. So he sent my husband a gift of livestock and precious things. And his soldiers took me to the palace to join his harem. And I was horrified. I'm married to Abram. I don't want to be part of the harem of Pharaoh and sleep with Pharaoh. But my husband never came. He never came to fetch me. He never came and said, this is my wife, you can't have her. And there was a shift in my relationship with Elohim. Because while my husband, who'd promised to cherish me, did not come, Elohim came. And Pharaoh's house had a plague upon it. And the people in his family, from his children and his wives to the servants, began to get terribly ill. And when he went to his priests for his god of Ra and asked them, why is this plague upon us? The priests said, you have committed treason against the God of Elohim. You have taken Abram's wife into your harem. So God came through for me when nobody else did. And Pharaoh was so angry that we had not told him the truth. A half-truth is still a lie. And he took me back to my husband and he said, take your wife and get out of my land. And while we'd been in Egypt, our flocks had grown yet again. Wow, God is one of abundance. And I rejoined my husband's party and we packed up and we prepared to head out into the Negev desert. And not only had our livestock grown, but we had more servants and more slaves. And I had acquired a new slave girl, an Egyptian girl, and we called her Stranger, Hagar. She joined our family. And we traveled back going towards the land of Canaan. And we came to the trees of Memrah. And here Abram built an altar to God. And he was worshiping and praising God for our abundance, for how our flocks had grown, for taking care of us during the famine, for returning me in spite of my husband. And once again, God made these lavish promises. And I sat there and I thought, the land is not what I care about. I don't care about the livestock. I don't even care about the jewelry I have. I want a child, and I'm now too old. My season has passed. My body will no longer produce a child. And we'd been living in Canaan for 10 years when I decided maybe God needed some help. Like in his prophecy, he hadn't said Sarai, he had said Abram. So maybe I could help things along here by procuring a child for my husband through my slave girl, because she's my slave, I own her. So what is hers is mine, and if she has a child, she can put it on my lap and it will be mine. And at last, this prophecy can be fulfilled. I will have a child. I will have a child. And when I first took the idea to my husband, he said, no, this is ridiculous. I'm trusting God. Let's wait on the Lord. I'm like, how much longer? When we left Haran, you were already 70 years old. You're pushing 90. And when we left Haran, you said, yeah, but your dad conceived you when he was 70. I'm like, he didn't conceive anyone when he was 90. And I nagged. And I annoyed. And I irritated as only a good wife can. And eventually he agreed. And he went into Hagar. And like that, she was pregnant. She could do so easily what I cannot do. And at first I was thrilled and excited. There's going to be a baby in the camp. This is great. And then Hagar started to treat me differently. Me, the mistress. Snide little comments about barren women. Her pride asserted herself. As that belly swelled, she would push it out in front of me. I hated her for it. I hated her for doing what I cannot. I hated her. She's carrying my husband's child. And I confess, I treated her badly. I treated her so badly that she chose to run away to the desert, to rather die of thirst in her pregnant state than face me. And my husband was livid. He was so angry with me because he said, you created this, you wanted this, you engineered this, and you're still not happy. Well, no, I'm not happy. And yes, I did, but you didn't have to sleep with her, did you? Anyway, Hagar came back. She said that in the desert, she lay down thinking she was going to die. And my God spoke to her. He said he saw her and that the child she bore was a male and would be the leading man of a great nation and would have the blessing of God upon him. And she was to return to us. And I thought, have I lost God's blessing? Have what I've done taken away everything that I thought God was going to do through me? As my interference cost me being part of God's plan? And she carried her child, and I tried to be nice. She gave birth to a perfect baby boy. And they called him Ishmael. And he was perfect. And every time Abram picked him up and held him, my heart broke. And as he grew, Abram would chase him around the camp, and they would laugh and giggle, and it killed me. Because it was not my child, it was Hagar's. And time passed, and the child grew. And one day we were sitting at our camp, And two men came walking across the desert. And as is our culture in a desert, Abram got up to make them welcome. And he offered them food, and I was on the other side of the tent. These two men said to him, "We've come as messengers from God to tell you that your wife, Sarai, will have a child. And it will be a boy, and you will call him Isaac." And you know, I was so bitter. I laughed, but not with joy. You know, one of those, yeah, whatever. I'm in my 90s. I'm not going to have a child. They heard me and they asked me, "Why do you laugh?" Suddenly I was seized with fear. Maybe these really were messengers from Elohim. But alongside this fear came a bubble of hope. For if they were messengers from God, my name was in the prophecy. God was not going to take what I had done against me and cut me out of his plan. I was still part of this plan for a nation. And so, as old as we were, we tried again. I fell pregnant. My joy, no bounds. I loved everything. I loved the backache. I loved needing the loo 300 times. I loved not being able to sleep. I loved the marks on my face because at last I was going to be a mother. At last God's promise was going to be fulfilled for me, Sarah. And you know, God is so kind and gracious. He changed names for both of us. He told Abram his new name would be Abraham, father of many nations. And he changed my name from troublesome, which I did deserve, to Sarah, princess, mother of kings. He's so gracious and forgiving, in spite of what I've done. And eventually, I gave birth to the most perfect, incredible baby boy. And we called him Isaac, which means laughter. And it was perfection. This boy owned my heart. And motherhood is all I dreamt of, plus more. And my life is so perfect. Except Hagar and Ishmael. They're here to remind me of my folly. Every time I look at his face, I'm reminded of my behavior. Every time I look at her, I'm reminded that now the inheritance is divided with two sons, not just mine. And I want it all for my boy. And it was, Ishmael must have been about 15 years old. And it was the weaning party for my darling. And we had slaughtered the best sheep and we were prepping the most amazing food. And when I looked up over there, Ishmael is teasing my boy. He's giving him a hard time. I'm so angry. So I went to my husband and I said, "Abraham, do something about this." And I think I'd worn him down. He just went, "They're your slaves. Do with them what you wish. And may God forgive me, for I did." All I could think of is get rid of the problem that I've created. Just, if they're not here anymore, there's not a reminder of my folly, and there's no competition for my son. And I did something dreadful. With minimal supplies, I sent Hagar, who'd never asked for any of this, and Ishmael, my husband's eldest son, into the desert. And I didn't think what would happen to them. I didn't care. I just didn't want them in my camp. And you know, it's something my sons and their sons and their sons pay for generations. For Ishmael and Hagar survived the desert because Elohim had his eye on them too. And he saved them. And they joined a tribe of Ishmaelites who took them to Egypt, to Hagar's home. And Ishmael married an Egyptian woman and has had many sons. And my bitterness has infected their whole tribe, and they are the sworn enemy of Abraham's family. So what do I want you to know from my story? I want you to know that God is gracious, that He doesn't care about your past mistakes. He doesn't care about which tribe you come from. He doesn't care about anything. He doesn't care about physical limitations that stop you doing what you need to do. He cares about your heart. And will you trust Him when you can't see a way? Will you trust Him when the world and society tells you it's impossible? Will you trust Him? Because He is faithful. He is grace itself. He's a forgiving and generous God. And He deserves your heart. And you need His care, for He is the Creator God. And that's the story of Sarah.